At our family reunion, my father grabbed my suitcase, threw it into the mud, and barked, "Your brother gets the guest room. Trash like you can sleep outside." My brother smirked while the entire family laughed. Nobody said a word, not even Mom. I took my bag and drove away. 19 days later, my brother arrived at the house and found every lock changed. Then he saw who was waiting on the porch. The bag hit the gravel before my brain caught up to what was happening. My father's hand was still open, fingers spread wide, and the dark green canvas landed face down in a puddle the color of old coffee. The initials my grandmother had stitched that last summer, the cream-colored S and E she had threaded sitting on her porch in July while telling me about the first boy who ever asked her to dance, disappeared under brown water. He did not throw it far, just far enough to make sure everyone in the driveway saw it land. Keith stood 3 steps behind him on the porch, arms crossed, grinning at something the rest of us had not been told about yet. 14 family members in that driveway. Uncle Morris by the grill with tongs in one hand and a paper plate in the other. 2 cousins sitting on the tailgate of a pickup with their shoes off. My mother near the screen door, dish towel folded over her shoulder. Her face doing the thing it always did when my father raised his voice in front of company. Nothing. Her face did nothing. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the lake water hitting the dock 50 yards behind the house and the low hum of a cooler somebody had plugged in to the porch outlet. The drive to Uncle Morris's lake property had taken 4 hours. A personal day burned, one I had been saving for parent-teacher conferences. A change of clothes, the folder of family photos I had been meaning to return to my mother since April, and a peach cobbler made from Grandma Helen's recipe the night before. All of it was inside that bag. My father looked at me the way you look at something you have already decided to throw away. Keith is building a real business. He needs the guest room, he needs rest, he needs this family behind him. You finger paint with second graders for $33,000 a year, and you think you get the same bed as a man making something of himself? Pick up your little bag and find a motel. That is where your salary belongs. 14 people heard that sentence. Not one flinched. My cousin Andrea looked down at her phone. Morris turned back to the grill and flipped something he had already flipped. Aunt Patricia studied the side of her iced tea glass like the condensation held instructions for what to do when your brother-in-law says something you cannot defend but will not challenge. Teaching art at Garfield Elementary pays $33,400 a year before taxes, and every adult in that driveway knew the number because my father had made sure of it at every gathering, every holiday phone call, every moment where someone asked how Simone was doing. Simone is fine. She colors with children. She is fine. Keith's landscaping company had already failed once. He relaunched it 8 months ago with a used mower and a logo he paid someone $40 to design on the internet. My father talked about Keith's second attempt at a business the way other men talk about their son making partner at a law firm. The walk to the puddle was 7 steps. The canvas was heavy with brown water, and the thread my grandmother had bought at a craft store in Decatur the week before her surgery was caked in mud the color of rust. The bag dripped a line of dirty water across the gravel as it came up. My father watched me pick it up. Keith watched from the porch. Bonnie Eastwood, 57 years old. Standing 4 feet from the man who had just thrown her own dead mother's handwork into a puddle, watched from the doorway with her eyes on the dish towel. The bag went into the trunk. The trunk closed with both hands. "I heard you, Dad." That was all. The car reversed down the gravel drive, turned onto the county road, and the rearview mirror showed the house getting smaller until a bend in the trees swallowed it. At a gas station 20 minutes south, I almost turned the car around. My foot lifted off the brake, and every habit built over 32 years pulled toward that driveway, toward smoothing it over, toward being the person who makes the family work by absorbing whatever they throw. Then the passenger seat caught my eye. The mud from the bag had soaked through the canvas and left a brown stain on the upholstery. The shape looked like a handprint pressed flat. The car went back into drive. If you have ever been the one your family keeps around for convenience and discards when comfort runs out, you already know what that drive felt like. Make sure you are subscribed to Family Secret Tales, because what my father did not know when he threw that bag is that he was protecting something much bigger than a guest room. A motel off the interstate. $22 a night, linoleum floor, shower curtain that did not reach the wall. The bathroom sink filled with warm water and hotel soap, and the bag went in. The mud loosened slowly. My thumb worked the stitching, pressing the cream thread until the S and the E came back. Not bright, not the way they looked when Grandma Helen handed me the bag on my 25th birthday and said, "Every woman needs something with her name on it that nobody gave permission for." But readable. The letters were readable. The bag went onto the shower rod to drip dry, and the edge of the motel bed creaked under my weight. Going to that reunion was a mistake I had been making in different forms for 3 years. Morris was hosting, and Morris had always been the one Eastwood who treated me like a person with a full name instead of a function. The drive was for him. The hope was for a version of my family that only exists between the decision to go and the moment of arrival. Sunday morning. Home, a 2-bedroom rental apartment 14 miles from the school. Clothes washed, bag hung on the back of the closet door. Monday morning came the way it always does, whether you are ready for it or not. On Wednesday afternoon, 3 days after the reunion, the classroom phone rang at 3:15. The last bus had pulled away. A row of tempera paintings hung drying on the line above the sink, small wet handprints in red and orange. The area code matched the county where the Ashland house sits. A woman's voice, mid-20s, polite. "Hi, this is Leah. I am calling about the lease renewal at the Ashland property. Keith said I should reach out to the owner directly this time." The phone pressed harder against my ear. The hallway was empty. A second grader's painting of a purple dog dripped quietly onto the newspaper below it. What lease? Leah explained it the way someone explains something they believe is completely normal. She had been renting the basement of the Ashland house from Keith for 11 months. $750 a month, paid through Venmo. Keith has been wonderful, quiet, keeps the yard nice. I just wanted to make sure the renewal goes through before the end of the month. My hand was gripping the edge of my desk hard enough to leave nail marks in the laminate. "Leah, can you tell me how you found the listing?" Craigslist. Keith posted it last October. Furnished basement, private entrance, $750 a month. He said he was the property manager for his family. Did he give you a lease? Month to month. He said that was how the family preferred it. Less paperwork. Less paperwork. Because paperwork would have required my name. And my name would have required my knowledge, and my knowledge would have ended the arrangement before the first rent check cleared. "Leah, can you send me your Venmo payment history with Keith? Every payment you have made." "Of course. Is everything okay?" "It will be." The screenshots came through within the hour. 11 payments, $750 each. Time-stamped, Keith's Venmo profile picture smiling back at me from every transaction line. The Ashland house is my house. Bought 6 years ago on a teacher's salary with a down payment saved over 4 years by eating lunch at my desk instead of the cafeteria, by driving a car with 200,000 miles on it, by saying no to every vacation my friends took and pretending the reason was something other than money. The house where the water heater got replaced by watching a 3-hour video and borrowing tools from the school janitor. The house that Keith moved into 2 years ago because he said he needed 6 months to get back on his feet after the first landscaping failure. 6 months became 24. The mortgage still came out of my checking account every month, along with property taxes and insurance. $112,000 remaining on the note. Market value around $168,000. My equity in that property was $56,000, and it was the only financial cushion I had ever built in my life. 4 years of packed lunches and a car that smelled like old upholstery. That was what $56,000 cost. Keith had been renting rooms in my house and keeping every dollar. One question. Did Keith tell you he owned the house? He said it was a family property. Family property. The exact phrase my father uses for anything he believes belongs to everyone except the person whose name is on the deed. The next afternoon, after the final bell, the drive to the Ashland house took 40 minutes through roads I had driven hundreds of times during the 2 years. The house was mine before Keith moved in. The key still worked. The front door opened the same way it always had, the small catch on the deadbolt where you have to lift the handle slightly. And the living room on the other side stopped me cold. A young man named Tyler sat on a gray sectional couch that did not belong to me, watching a basketball game on a flat screen mounted to a wall I had painted sage green myself the summer after closing. He looked up and froze the way you freeze when the person standing in the doorway clearly belongs there more than you do. Tyler was 21, a college student. He had been renting the spare bedroom from Keith for 8 months, $650 a month, cash, handed directly to Keith on the first of every month, no lease, no paper trail except the bank deposits Keith made in matching amounts. My own house, my mortgage payments, my name on the deed filed at the county recorder's office, and a stranger sat on a couch watching television in the room where a reading chair and a shelf of picture books used to sit, the ones I used for Saturday morning lesson planning before Keith asked to stay for 6 months. The spare bedroom now held a twin bed, a mini fridge plugged into the outlet I had paid an electrician to install, and a laundry basket full of clothes that belonged to someone who had never met me. Keith's truck was gone. A stack of mail sat on the kitchen counter. 3 of the envelopes listed Keith's Landscaping LLC as the business. The return address on one of them was a credit union. Tyler got told 3 things. My name is Simone Eastwood. My name is on the deed to this house. And someone would be in contact with him soon about his living situation. His face went white. He started to apologize. He was 21 and had no idea he was part of anything wrong, and stopping his apology was the right thing to do. He was not the one who owed me anything. Outside, the yard showed signs of Keith's landscaping operation. A commercial mower parked beside the garage. A trailer with edging equipment strapped down, a stack of business cards on the porch railing, damp from the morning dew, the address printed on them matching the address on my mortgage statement. That night, the phone call went to Zara. Zara Mitchell, 30, fellow art teacher at Garfield, the woman who sat with me in the faculty parking lot for an hour the afternoon Grandma Helen died. Zara did not try to make it better that day. She did not say anything wise or comforting. She sat in the passenger seat of my car with 2 cups of coffee from the teacher's lounge and waited until my breathing evened out. That was the year teaching almost ended for me, and Zara was the reason it did not. Not a speech, not advice. Presence, she showed up every day and treated me like someone who belonged where she was. The math came out flat over the phone. 750 times 11 is 8,250. 650 times 8 is 5,200. $13,450 collected from my property. 0 to me. Zara did not say sorry. She did not say that was terrible. What is the address of the house? The address came out automatically. Good, you were going to need that. 3 steps ahead. Zara always saw 3 steps ahead of a problem while everyone else was still trying to name the first one. Before hanging up, she said one more thing. Simone, you own that house. That is not nothing. Whatever Keith built on top of it, he built on your ground. Remember that when you start feeling guilty, because you will. She was right about the guilt, too. It lasted about 48 hours. Then, Hector's office gave it something better to turn into. By 7 the next morning, 3 school days' worth of subplans were written and emailed to the front office. A personal day request went in for Friday. By 8:30, the office of Hector Fuentes was open. Hector was 48 years old, a real estate attorney with a practice in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a sandwich shop. His waiting room had 4 chairs, a fake plant, and a framed law degree from a state university that nobody in the room needed to be impressed by. $220 an hour. He did not waste a word of it. The deed went onto his desk first. Then, the mortgage statements showing 24 months of payments made from my checking account. Then, Leah's Venmo screenshots. Then the notes from the visit to the house, including Tyler's name, the rent amount, and the duration. All of it in a manila folder that weighed almost nothing and contained the evidence that my brother and my father had turned my property into the foundation of a business I knew nothing about. 2 days of county records produced 3 findings. Finding 1, Keith had filed a homestead exemption on the Ashland house. A homestead exemption reduces property taxes by declaring a property as your primary residence. Keith was not on the deed. He was not on the mortgage. He did not own the property. The county had processed the filing because nobody flagged it. That exemption was fraud. And it meant reduced taxes had been collected on my property based on a false declaration Keith signed. Finding 2, Keith registered his landscaping LLC at the Ashland address 6 months earlier, public record, filed with the Secretary of State's office. Finding 3 changed everything. Hector pulled the UCC filing on an equipment loan, $22,000. Commercial landscaping equipment, mowers, a trailer, edging tools, a pressure washer. The lender was a regional credit union. The loan application listed the Ashland house as Keith's primary stable residence. The co-signer on that loan was Victor Eastwood, my father. Hector laid the timeline across his desk the way a surgeon lays instruments on a tray, each document in order. Each date circled in blue ink. He tapped the loan date with the cap of his pen. When was the reunion? Mid-September. The 14th. This loan was signed June 2nd. 17 weeks before the 14th. He moved the pen to the address line on the application. And this is your house listed as his primary stable residence. If you had visited that property at any point during those 17 weeks, you would have found the subtenants, discovered the subletting income, and the residential stability claim on this application would have collapsed. He set the pen down. Your father did not lose his temper at the reunion, Miss Eastwood. He needed you nowhere near that house. The chair in Hector's office was plastic, the kind that sticks to your legs in summer. The strip mall parking lot was visible through the window behind him, 3 cars baking in the heat, and a woman walking into the dry cleaner next door, carrying a garment bag over her shoulder. Normal afternoon. Normal strip mall. And the ground shifted under everything I thought I understood about that driveway. 17 weeks. My father had known about the loan for 17 weeks before the reunion. For 17 weeks, he needed me to stay away from the Ashland house. For 17 weeks, every phone call, every comment about my salary, every dismissive remark about teaching was not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was maintenance. He was maintaining a distance between me and my own property, because the moment I walked through that front door and found Leah in the basement or Tyler in the spare bedroom, the questions would start, and the questions would lead to the LLC registration, and the registration would lead to the loan application, and the loan application would lead back to Victor's signature on a $22,000 note that depended on my house being Keith's house. He threw my grandmother's bag in the dirt so I would not walk through my own door and find the truth behind it. The finger painting line, the salary, the motel, none of it was anger. All of it was risk management. My own father ran a containment operation on me at a family reunion so his co-signed loan would not collapse. I almost called Keith to warn him before the birthday dinner. My phone was already in my hand, his name already pulled up in the contacts. Then the screen showed Leah's Venmo screenshot still saved in the photo roll. $750. Memo line reading Sept basement rent. The phone went back into the purse. If you are still listening, stay close, because what happened next is the reason this story is on Family Secret Tales. My mother's 57th birthday was 9 days away. The whole family would be there. Hector asked one question. Do you want the house sold or kept? Sold. On day 9, Hector filed a 30-day notice to vacate served to Keith at the Ashland address. Standard legal process. A second letter went to the credit union clarifying that Keith Eastwood had no ownership interest, no tenancy agreement, and no legal right to claim the Ashland property as his residence on any application. A third letter went to the county assessor's office requesting review and reassessment of the fraudulent homestead exemption. A realtor got called on day 12. The Ashland house would be listed the week after the confrontation. Day 17. Bonnie's 57th birthday dinner. Family home on Ridgemont, not the lake property. Different house, different room, same people. 8 family members around the dining table. Uncle Morris at the head. Cousins Andrea and Paul across from each other. Aunt Patricia, Bonnie's sister who had driven in from Decatur. Keith at the far end with his elbows on the table. Victor beside him, collar buttoned, jaw set. Bonnie in the kitchen doorway carrying the cake she baked herself because she always baked her own birthday cake. She called it tradition. The truth was simpler. She did not trust anyone else to do it correctly. The green weekender bag was on my shoulder when the front door opened. Victor's shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief spread across his jaw like he had been holding his teeth together for 17 days and could finally stop. Glad you came to your senses, Simone. The chair pulled out. The pot roast got eaten. Aunt Patricia's new earrings got complimented. Andrea's daughter's soccer season got discussed in full. Coffee got poured for Uncle Morris, and he patted my hand the way he always does. The same way Grandma Helen used to before she said something she meant. After the cake was cut, and the candles cleared, and the paper plates were stacked in the trash, the coffee cup went down on the table, and the chair turned toward Keith. How is Leah doing? Still enjoying the basement? Keith's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it on the plate with a small click, metal on ceramic, the only sharp sound in a room where everyone else was still chewing. His eyes cut to Victor and came back. Who? Leah, 26. She has been renting the basement at the Ashland house for 11 months, $750 a month through Venmo. She called me about a lease renewal 3 days after the reunion. She thought I already knew. The weekender bag opened. The folder came out. Victor leaned forward, both palms flat on the table. Simone, this is your mother's birthday. You picked a family reunion to throw my bag in the mud, Dad. You do not get to choose which family events stay clean. The first sheet hit the table. Venmo receipts, 11 payments from Leah to Keith, $750 each, $8,250. Beside it, the second set. Tyler's payment records reconstructed from bank deposits Keith made in matching amounts of $650. 8 entries across 8 months. $5,200. Victor's hand reached for the paper. The paper pulled back. Keith has been living in my house for 2 years without paying a single dollar. That was the deal, and I honored it. What he did not tell any of you is that he rented the basement to a woman named Leah for $750 a month. He rented my spare bedroom to a college student named Tyler for $650. He collected $13,450 from my property and kept every cent. He filed a false homestead exemption on a house he does not own. He registered his landscaping business at my address without my knowledge or consent. And Dad, you co-signed his $22,000 equipment loan 4 months before the reunion. The same reunion where you threw my grandmother's bag into the mud and told me to find a motel. You did not lose your temper that day. You needed me to stay away from my own house long enough for Keith's loan paperwork to hold up. Every person at this table can do the math. Morris set his napkin on the table and folded his hands on top of it. Andrea picked up her coffee cup, looked at the surface, and set it down without drinking. She did not touch it again. Paul leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. Aunt Patricia turned to Bonnie. Bonnie looked at the spatula still in her hand, frosting on the edge from cutting the cake. Keith leaned forward with both palms up, the body language of a man who has practiced appearing reasonable for 35 years. Simone, it was temporary. I was building towards something. I was going to pay you back once the contracts came in steady. Dad knew. We had a plan. It was all going to even out. You filed a false homestead exemption on my property, Keith. That is not a plan. That is fraud. You are blowing this out of proportion. It is a family house. It is my house. My name on the deed. My payments every month for 6 years. My down payment. My equity. $56,000 of it. Not family property. Mine. Victor tried to take control. His plate pushed forward. His shoulders squared. We can work this out privately. This is not the place. You threw my bag into a puddle in front of 14 people and told me my salary belonged in a motel. That was the place you chose, Dad. This is the place I am choosing. Victor's jaw muscles bunched and released. His chair scraped back 6 inches without him standing. His body trying to leave while his pride kept him seated. His hand went flat on the table, fingers spread the same way they had been when he threw the bag, and a tremor ran through his ring finger. He pressed his palm down harder to stop it. The color left his face from the collar up, gray spreading the way water leaves a cloth when you wring it out. Uncle Morris looked at Victor. She owns that house, Vic. The boy was renting rooms in a house he does not own? Victor said nothing. Morris turned to Keith. And you put her address on a loan application? Keith opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The address is where I live, where you lived. Present tense seems like a stretch. Keith turned with something in his eyes, trying to pass for love, but landing closer to panic. Simone, come on. We grew up in this family together. You are not going to let some paperwork destroy everything we have. Aunt Patricia set her fork down carefully, the way you set something down when you realize you will not be picking it up again. Paul had not moved, but his arms were tighter across his chest than they had been 30 seconds ago. Morris was watching Victor the way you watch a man who owes you an explanation he is never going to give. You finger painted with second graders for $33,000 a year. That is what Dad said in front of 14 people while my grandmother's bag sat in a puddle. The finger painter's mortgage payments are the only reason your loan application held up. The finger painter's property taxes kept that house standing. The finger painter's name on that deed is the only thing that put a roof over your tenants and your LLC. Everything you have been standing on, Keith, belongs to the woman you and Dad thought was too small to notice. Keith tried once more, his voice climbing half an octave. This is family business. We handle family business inside the family. You handled it inside my house without telling me. That stopped being family business the day you filed a false document with the county. Victor's nostrils flared. His breathing went shallow and fast, through the nose, the kind of breathing a person does when they are trying to hold their hands still. The veins on the back of his right hand stood out blue and rigid where he gripped the edge of the table. The sentence that had been sitting in my chest for 17 days, the one that formed in a motel bathroom while mud came off cream-colored thread, came out flat and quiet. You threw my grandmother's bag in the mud to keep me away from a house you were stealing. The mud washed off, Dad. The theft is permanent. Victor stared. His mouth opened and closed twice without producing a sound. Then something came out, barely above a whisper. That is not what happened. Every document on this table says otherwise, Dad. The dates match. The signatures match. The address matches. You can tell this table it is not what happened. Or you can look at the paperwork and accept that it is exactly what happened." He looked at Bonnie. Bonnie looked at the floor. The spatula was still in her hand, and there was frosting drying on the edge, and she had not put it down once since the folder came out of the bag. The chair pushed back, both feet on the ground. "I am selling the Ashland house. Keith has 23 days left on his 30-day notice. Dad, whatever the lender decides about that $22,000 loan is between you and the credit union. I will not cover it. I will not co-sign a replacement. I will not bail either of you out. The last favor I did for this family was letting Keith move into that house 2 years ago. That favor is finished. The next call either of you gets will be from my attorney or from the county assessor. Neither one will be asking how you feel about it." Victor's voice came from low in his throat, cracked at the edges. "You were throwing away this family over a house. You threw away your daughter over a lawnmower loan." The weekender bag went over my shoulder. The folder was inside it. The front door opened and closed, and the porch steps went by under my feet without a single glance backward. Behind me, Morris's chair scraped. Keith said my name once. The way a person says a word when they realize it no longer opens the door it used to. Day 19. Keith's truck pulled up to the curb at the Ashland house at 10 in the morning. The front door had a new deadbolt bright brass against the weathered wood. His key slid in and turned half a rotation before stopping dead. He pulled it out. Tried again. Same result. The side door was the same. He walked around to the back and found the kitchen door locked with a knob he had never seen before. He cupped his hands against the kitchen window and saw cardboard boxes stacked along the wall in a neat row, each one labeled in black marker. K. Eastwood Kitchen. K. Eastwood Bathroom. K. Eastwood Bedroom. His name on boxes in a house that used to feel like his. Every lock changed, every belonging packed. He came back around to the front. The porch steps were occupied. I was sitting there with my phone in my lap and the green weekender bag beside me. The realtor's sedan was parked in the driveway. Through the bay window, a young couple walked slowly through the living room, the wife running her hand along the windowsill, the husband checking the baseboards. They were measuring the space with their eyes the way people do when they are already imagining their furniture in it. Keith stopped at the bottom of the steps. His work boots were muddy. Grass clippings stuck to his jeans from a morning job. He looked at the couple inside the house and then at me and then at the boxes near the garage. "What are you doing?" "Selling my house." "You cannot just sell the house, Simone. My things are in there. My business runs out of this address. Your things are in those boxes. Your business is registered at an address you had no right to use. And the 30-day notice gave you until day 39. The locks changed on day 18 because the property owner has the right to secure her own property. Your belongings are boxed, labeled, and waiting. Nothing was discarded." His voice cracked in a place I had never heard break before, not even when the first business went under, not even when his girlfriend packed her car and drove to her mother's house without telling him she was leaving. "Simone, that living room is where we built blanket forts when the power went out. Remember? You, me, and Grandma Helen with the flashlights. You cannot sell that. That house is us." I almost softened. The memory was real. The blanket forts were real. Grandma Helen holding the flashlight under her chin to make shadow puppets while the storm shook the windows was real. And then the driveway came back. 14 people standing in the gravel. My mother's mouth closed. My grandmother's stitching in the mud. Not one word from any of them. The box labeled K. Eastwood Kitchen was stacked with the others near the garage. It was heavy. Dishes, a coffee maker, a cast iron skillet. It went into Keith's hands without a word. Then the realtor's car door opened, the passenger seat accepted my weight, and the door closed. The car pulled down the driveway. Keith stood on the porch of a house he had treated like his own, holding a box of things that were actually his, watching the car disappear around the bend. 3 days after the birthday dinner, Uncle Morris called Victor. "I sat at that reunion and watched you throw that girl's bag in the dirt, Vic. I thought you were having a bad day. Thought you were being a hard old man who would feel lousy about it by Monday and call her to apologize. Now I know you were running interference so the boy could keep collecting rent on her house and your co-signed loan would not blow up." Victor started to speak. Morris cut him off. "I have spent 30 years defending you to people who said you were hard on that girl. I told them you were old-fashioned, not cruel. I told them Simone understood you better than they did. Turns out Simone understood you perfectly, and I was the one who had it wrong. Do not call me for Thanksgiving. Do not call me for Christmas. I am going to need a very long time to sit with what I watched you do in my own driveway and said nothing about." The line went dead. Victor stood in the kitchen holding the phone at his side. He did not call Morris back. Bonnie appeared in the doorway. She looked at Victor's face and opened her mouth and then closed it. The same motion she had made in the driveway at the reunion. The same motion she had made at the birthday dinner. The same motion she had been making for the entire length of her marriage. The phone sat on the counter where Victor put it down, and it stayed there for the rest of the night. 4 days later, the credit union sent Victor a letter requesting updated documentation on Keith's equipment loan. The envelope sat on his kitchen counter for 6 hours before he opened it. The next morning, a loan officer called. The questions came one at a time, each one worse than the last: Keith's current residential address, his verifiable employment income, whether Victor, as co-signer, was aware at the time of signing that the borrower's stated primary residence belonged to a third party, whether Victor was aware that said third party had now filed a formal notice to vacate. Victor sat at the kitchen table answering each question in a voice flat enough to sand wood. When the loan officer asked for documentation proving Keith had alternative stable housing, Victor said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he said, "I will need to call you back." The call ended. He stayed at the table. 20 minutes passed. Bonnie set a plate of leftover pot roast in front of him without speaking. The plate was still untouched when she came back to clear the counter an hour later. The fork had not been picked up. Keith applied for 3 apartments in the first 2 weeks after the eviction notice. All 3 required credit checks. All 3 came back with a credit history too thin to approve without a co-signer, and Victor's name already attached to a $22,000 equipment loan under active lender review was not the co-signature any property manager wanted to accept. The county assessor's office opened a formal review of the fraudulent homestead exemption Keith had filed. Back taxes on the difference between the exempted and actual rate, plus a penalty on the exempted amount, would follow once the review completed. Hector estimated the penalty at somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000, depending on the county's assessment timeline. 5 weeks after the locks changed, Keith drove past the Ashland house on his way back from a mowing job 3 streets over. The truck slowed without him deciding to slow it. A child's red bicycle was on its side in the front yard, exactly where Keith used to park the edging trailer. The porch light had changed, warm yellow now instead of the white fluorescent that had been there since the house was mine. A plastic pinwheel stuck in the garden bed spun slowly in the afternoon wind. A woman Keith did not recognize opened the front door, looked at his truck idling at the curb, and went back inside without a second glance. She did not know the truck. She did not know the man. The house was hers now, and Keith was just someone parked on a public street looking at a building he could no longer enter. His key ring was on the passenger seat. The house key was still there, brass and worn smooth at the teeth from the 2 years he had used it every day. He picked it up, held it between his thumb and index finger the way you hold something you are not ready to throw away but have no use for anymore. It fit nothing. No door, no deadbolt, no side entrance. The key was a souvenir of a house that had stopped being his the moment he decided to profit from it without telling the person who owned it. The truck started. It pulled away from the curb and drove 7 miles to Victor's house, where Keith's clothes were folded into 2 garbage bags in the guest room closet, his landscaping equipment sat under a blue tarp in the backyard, and a commercial mower with 14 payments remaining waited beside a trailer that had nowhere to be parked legally. Victor sits in his kitchen now. Keith is in the guest room with the door closed. The $22,000 loan payment is due in 9 days. Morris has not called. Bonnie moves through the house, setting plates and folding towels and saying nothing about any of it. Because Bonnie has spent a lifetime building her world on the practice of saying nothing when saying something might cost her the version of her family she needs to believe is real. Last Thursday, after a full day of teaching and a quiet dinner made from groceries bought with my own money earned at a job my father spent years mocking, a student's watercolor painting went up on the wall of my new apartment. The place is smaller than the Ashland house. The walls are cleaner because nobody has lived here long enough to leave marks. The painting shows a house with a yellow door and a tree in the yard that is taller than the roof, the way children draw trees, enormous and unbreakable and permanent. Painter's tape holds it to the wall, the way my students are taught to hang their work. Nothing permanent, nothing that cannot be moved when something better comes along. That is the point. The green weekender bag sits by the front door. The initials are faintly stained where the mud soaked through the thread that September afternoon at the lake property. The S is slightly clearer than the E. The zipper still works. The bag held everything I needed twice. Once when my father threw me out. Once when I walked out on my own terms. If this story reminded you of someone who mistook your patience for permission and your silence for surrender, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And if you have not already, subscribe to Family Secret Tales. Some bags carry more than clothes. Some carry the proof that you were never the problem.